What's up, guys? Welcome to this new episode and series. We are going to start with this new series about Devops or server administration or server management about Linux. The main purpose behind this course is learn about the Linux basic because Linux depends on what context you are going to use it. For example, I used to use Linux in desktop environments, like I don't know, to record videos, programming, use multimedia, or maybe web browser. But in other hand, we can use Linux on servers, and that was the most known case where we can use Linux to maybe deploy applications, maybe manage resource or handle anything you want. So we are going to start with the most basic topic, and is about the introduction to a user system in Linux. We are going to see some important files that you have to know to manage correctly all about user, and maybe some basic commands that are really helpful meanwhile you are using any distro based on Linux. So we are going to log in our server. In my case, my server uses the Debian user and the following IP. So let's dive into perform the login. I don't know, I think I made wrong. And that's it. In this episode, we are going to cover 3 different files and 4 different commands. We are going to start with the etc/passwd, and this file is used to save all about user in our system. So let's use cat etc passwd. You don't have to use sudo because maybe this is a public information, but the following file have to use sudo to see the content. So let's see the file, and as you can see, we have a lot of information in a specific format. We are going to cover the format as well, but maybe the most important register about this is maybe the first one about root, and the last one is the Debian, that is our user. Maybe this user just right there are not usable users, because in most cases service and programs use these users to perform some changes in the system. So don't worry about it. You can just log in as proxy or log in as a list, because maybe this is only used by programs to perform certain operations. So the most important user are root, the first one, and the following to the 1000. Maybe if you're asking any user less than 1000 are maybe system or service users. Maybe in other hand, user that we can log in, but users after 1000 or higher than 1000 are usable to log in. For example, the first one in 1000 is not 1001 or 1002, it's just 1000 is Debian, because it's the first user that was registered in this in the server. So to understand this format is pretty easy, because we can use the separator or the discriminator. The separator is known as colon, and in this particular case, colon split just the information. The first one is the user name. As you can see, Debian, or in the following command about who am I, allows to know what is the user. In my case, is Debian. Following, we have the password field. This password field is no more longer used, because maybe it on the past has some technical difficulties, and maybe for security purpose, this was moved on to the etc/shadow, the following file that we are going to cover. The following number is the user ID, that is about 1000, and the following ID is about the group user, or the main group user. In my case, or well, in the Unix system, once you create a user, the user has the ID and the user ID and the group ID, and the group ID has the same user ID and also has the same username. For example, if I create the Debian user, also I am going to create the Debian group, and the Debian group will be 1000 as well. The Debian ID is 1000. The next one information is just extra information. For example, Debian is not a big deal. Maybe you can use, once you are going to create a user, you can use the employee name and the identifier or something like that. The next one is the home directory or the home location folder. In my case, it's home Debian. Once you create a user, it automatically creates their home folder using the same name. For example, if my user is Debian, the home folder will be Debian. And the last one is the bash or command interpreter, because, well, in Linux we can use bin bash, or we can use beans. It's this one, because I don't know how to pronounce the alphabet yet, and other more like fish and more. So the following file is etc/shadow, and you have to use sudo to see the file content. So let's see what are used right there, and as you can see, we have another file format, or maybe registry format, and maybe the most important is the Debian, and this password already just right there. This password is already encrypted, so don't worry about it, but maybe you can find the way out to discover my password. I dare you to do it. And maybe other registers like, I don't know, root, daemon, bin, sys, and other one are the same as this one about etc/pswd. So what is the difference here? Well, in this file, we are going to cover all about the user information. The last one was maybe generic representation about user, group, and more. In this case, we are also cover more important information about the user. For example, the name, the password, and these numbers just right there. What about these numbers? Okay, the next number following to the encrypted password is the last change about the password in days. If you are asking why have a lot of days, because this counter starts on the 1st January of 1970. So yeah, well, yesterday was this amount of days about the last modification of the password. But if I change my password just right now, this is going to change maybe 0, and tomorrow will be 1, and the following day will be 2, and more. The following information is this 0 just right there, and this 0 in respect to the minimum days about or force to user to change their password. As you can see, there is no days defined, but maybe if you have an important system and the user have to frequently change their password, it's important maybe create a policy that makes or enforce users to change password regularly, like, I don't know, each 2 days, each 3 days, and so on. And the next one is the the maximum days that the user can use the actual password until they have to change it. For example, as you can see, there are a lot of days, and these days is like, I don't know, it's about more than 200 year, so don't worry about it. So this is for live. The next one is the maybe the broadcast or the warning. So maybe if close to the more than 200 days, the system warning to the Debian user, hey, you have to change your password, so let's do it. And the next one, maybe just right there is not specified, is the inactive days, and it's allowed to modify the user state. Maybe if the user doesn't connect in the following 30 days, you can classify it as a inactive user and maybe revoke some permissions and make other or perform other actions. And the next one is the expiration date, that is maybe more extended than the inactive days, because expiration is like, okay, if you don't use this account, or maybe this account will be inaccessible in 1 year, you are going to specify the number of days that the account will be inaccessible, and that's why the expiration date. Maybe as you asking about these characters right there, like this exclamation mark, the asterisk, or both of them, because you see this only one or this only one, but you see both of them just right there. And well, this indicates, instead of the password, indicates maybe when you create, or once you create a new account and you don't set up a password, you will see this exclamation mark, because it's a unaccessible account. Maybe you can access that account using other methods, but if the account doesn't have a password, you can access from outside and something like that. This exclamation mark means a block account temporarily, because you can change the policy, set up a password depending on the case. If you see the asterisk, only the asterisk just right there, is maybe a unavailable or unaccessed account that you can access literally, maybe because was unavailable, maybe past the inactive days, or maybe past the expiration date, so you can access to that account. And the next one is the exclamation mark and the asterisk, just like that, is, and it means the both, also a deactivate account and a block account. Maybe don't worry about it, because it's not something that you are going to see a lot of times, but it's important to know the difference, because maybe this is just like a guide that allows you to know, okay, that account are unusable, because I already told you that these accounts or this user will be used by apps or will be used by service, and the idea is not use like users and avoid to try to log in, because it's not the main purpose about it. As you can see, the normal purpose is for example Debian, and the following user we are going to register in on the system. And the next file is the, sorry about that, the group file. And the group file doesn't need a sudo at all, so you can use cat atc group, and the group give us information about the groups. And as you can see, and I already told you also, groups are created based on the user. So if you create a Debian user, there will be a Debian group, or for example the root user also happens the same. So maybe something that repeat, but it are not in all cases. As you can see, we see Docker group, but Docker user doesn't exist, and this is a proof because Debian is before Docker, because Docker was created after Debian, because I have to install Docker to make some tests, so that's why we have Docker after Debian. And maybe if you are asking about the format, is also easy to understand. We are going to use the colon to split each information. And the first one is the group name. The second one is something that is are not available at all, that in on the past was used to a kind of a password group that today is not longer used. And the next one is the group ID, and as you can see, if the Debian user has the ID 1000, the Debian group will have also the same ID in the group ID 1000, and also with Docker. But a fun fact is Docker use less than 1000 ID, because I already told you that if the user or the group is lower than 1000, is because that group will be used by any program, any process, any service on the system to perform some action. But Docker is a special group, because Docker is also used to add users and can use the basic Docker commands without sudo. Because if I try to, I don't know, execute Docker, it gives me, well, I don't know if I already configured this. I don't think so. For example, let's see, Docker pull, I don't know, node. As you can see, I don't have permission and I have to perform sudo. So if I try to add Debian to the Docker group, we can avoid to use the sudo command, because the user Debian that are performing the Docker command also belongs in the Docker group. So maybe this is useful, because groups also allows to group permissions, keep permission to groups, and avoid to, I don't know, imagine if you have 3000 users and you want to give about the 3000 2000 about access to a specific folder, is unimaginable try to put to 2000 users the same the same permission or group of permissions. So the basic idea is give that permission to a specific group and add the 2000 users to the same group, and maybe can change in a global or generic way. So that's so useful. And maybe the following one is the user that belongs in the group. For example, my only and one user is Debian. So Debian belongs different groups that maybe allows to see logs, use CD-ROMs or Fluffy, but this is not common, and this is a remote server, so I can insert a CD. Also important groups like sudo. Sudo allows us perform some specific actions that need super user access. And maybe some like plug deb, maybe if you want to insert USB or something like that. But again, it's a remote server, so I can access physically to the server. But yeah, it is also useful to see that kind of information. So we already finished with the files. We are going to continue with the commands. The commands we are going to cover are 4, starting with who am I. Who am I allows to know in what user we are using. Maybe we already know about it, because in my prompt I'm using this format that allows to see the username. But if you want to change this and only use the system, or maybe about showing any kind of information, so and you don't know who are you, you can use who am I and see the username, not the ID, not the permission, not the group, the username. So the following one is ID. ID allows to see more information about the user, about the same user of who am I, like the user ID 1000, the name is Debian, the group ID that also is 1000 and also is Debian, and the other groups using the ID and the name, like 1000 Debian, for ADM, 20 dialogue, 24 CD-ROM, and more. So as you can see, something useful to know what groups our users belongs with. And I think that's all. So we are going to continue with who and W command that allows to give information about the session that are currently on my server. Maybe you asking, I am Dux. Don't worry, because this is a dynamic ID using a proxy and a VPS, so it's not a big deal using that specific ID. And as you can see, you have information about the user that are connect to the server using the specific command interface, that is the number 0, the date where when start the connection, that in my case is less 5 hours, and yeah, you already know this, the hour of about my last connection and my IP address. But if you need more information, you can use only or just W and see, for example, user, the command interpreter or TTE session from the date or time login, maybe the idle time, the CPU usage in time and percentage, and the energy consumption. I don't know why, but that's the information. And I think that's all. I hope this video was helpful, and see you in the next time. Bye bye.